morning, ladies. My name is Veronica, and I'm really excited to bring you today's episode of Her Story. Today, we're going to be having a chat with Jen Larsen about insecurity and finding our security in God. Before that chat, I'm just going to have a couple of questions to lead our thoughts and to really help us dig deep into our own hearts in this area. And so my first question is, where does insecurity usually come from? When I was looking stuff up, it seemed that most of the time it came up from questions of doubt. Questions like, do I matter? Am I important? Am I enough? Am I loved? As women, the temptation can be to let the world define that for me, define where I get my security. Whether it's from a relationship, from my job, from my body. The temptation is that we can allow it to define us, and then we set ourselves up against each other. How many times have we gone on Facebook or Instagram and looked at that amazing person on there that seems to have it all together, whether it's in motherhood or in, traveling or whatever her feed has. We just see her and she's amazing. And my heart gets so envious. I think as daughters of the King, the question needs to be, where do I need to get my security from? In Genesis 3:1, we see the first woman struggle with this same doubt. In Genesis 3:1, the scripture reads, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?'" This serpent was so crafty when he tempted Eve, and he is still at work in our lives today. Still at work to cause us to doubt, to ask those questions of doubt that she must have asked. I can only imagine what went through her mind. Is God holding out on me? Did he lie to me? Was I not enough for him to tell me the full truth? We all have a story like Eve's, where we doubt and we decide for ourselves that we cannot trust God. So these questions of where does my worth come from? Do I matter? And what will it take for me to matter? Those questions require a lot of vulnerability. And so today I'm really excited to get into those questions with Jen. And I pray that you also have someone in your life that you can dig into those questions with. The areas of our lives that our security affects are so big. Whether it's being in a relationship, being strong and independent, my health, my career, my sexual identity. And so I ask you to think about what happens when those things fall through. When they fail us, when we get fired, when we're passed up for promotions, when we get a bad health diagnosis, or when our hearts are broken. What will give us worth and security when those things happen? And it's in times like that I look to the psalmist in Psalm 61 verse 2, and I relate to this scripture. It says, "From the ends of the earth I call to you. As I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And so today, ladies, I pray that our conversation can help lead you to the rock, lead you to that source of security, which is our Father. I have a couple of book recommendations for you. And if you have any book recommendations, please put them in the comment section. We all want to grow and learn from each other. And so I pray that this can be a helpful time. The first book I have is Secure in Heart by Robin Widener. She's an amazing disciple in our fellowship of churches. And her book, Secure in Heart, and another book she has, Eve's Song, are really amazing when it comes to insecurity. Another book recommendation I have is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And she's a researcher that has focused her career on researching vulnerability and empathy. And so I hope these books help you, and I pray that our conversation today also helps you. Here's Jen Larsen. Well, hello, ladies. We're really happy to be here with Jen Larsen, and we're excited to be talking about security in God and insecurity. And so I'm really grateful that we're talking about this topic. When we're trying to come up with it, I feel like God just led us to this topic, and so I'm really happy about that. And so just a couple of questions to introduce yourself to everybody. How long have you been a disciple?
Well, I've been a disciple, I calculated today, for 25 years, coming up in June. I can't believe it's been 25 years.
And you were converted in college, yes? Here
in Lincoln.
In Lincoln, Nebraska.
I think it was my second year when I went to Lincoln. Someone just met me walking down the sidewalk and reached out to me, and
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So for our topic today, insecurity and security in God, how would you define insecurity?
Insecurity, I feel like, is feeling like you don't have any protection or anything to back you up. You're completely, in my mind, alone and by yourself, on your own, I guess.
That's a really great definition, because I feel like I like the way your brain works, because I think it's voicing something that I feel, but I don't know that I had words for. But I like that idea of protection, because then when you think of the opposite of security, how would you define that?
Right. Security, I feel like, is knowing that you have someone or something out there that you can rely on. You have someplace to go, whether it's a shelter or whether it's a person to go to. You have something out there that you can go to in times of trouble, or something to help you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, because I think even as we talk about this topic, it's so good to define terms, right? Like, I think sometimes we think of insecurity and we think of like, oh, like how I look in a picture, how I come across. But the root can all really come back to a lot of that idea of feeling protected or feeling safe. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. So you became a disciple earlier in life, in college. And so before that time, what do you feel like were things that brought you security, or things that you tried to put your security in?
Well, definitely I tried to put security in my relationships. I don't think that I grew up feeling very emotionally secure. And maybe it's the parenting. I think back then the baby boomers, they didn't really provide their children emotional security. It was more about the things that you did. So you would get praise for doing things, but there was not a lot of encouragement on just who you were or who you were in your being. And so I feel like maybe a lot of people my age tried to prove our worth in the things that we did. And we had very low self-worth. In fact, I was just talking to my sister when she was here last week, and she was talking to me about one of her relationships and how she so easily jumped into it because the guy was very complimentary of her. And I thought, I had an exact same situation in college where this guy, kind of just a bum, just didn't really have a lot going for him, but he wrote me a little note about how pretty I was. And I was just like, okay, fine, I'll go out with you. I was like, that's all I needed. It was just a little bit, a little compliment. So, I felt like as far as where I tried to put my security, I tried to get security from relationships, definitely in men.
How do you feel like you've grown since you became a disciple, or how did that change after you became a Christian?
Well, once I became a Christian, I felt like I had security in God. Like the Psalm says, He is our rock and our fortress and our shelter. And so I felt like I had someone that I could go to and rely on to get my emotional needs met, and I didn't need to look for it in the world anymore. So that was such a relief, because pretty much every relationship I ever had, I think every guy that I ever dated cheated on me.
Oh.
And so there's no security in wondering, even if you think your relationship is secure, you find out that he's been cheating. And so you could never trust, even if I down the line would have gotten married, I don't think I ever would have trusted that a man was going to be faithful to me.
Wow. And so how does that play itself out in your marriage now that you have such a different place to get security from?
Yeah. I trust now. Like if I was married to a non-Christian, I probably would still struggle. But just knowing that we all give an account to the same God, I feel secure.
That's so encouraging.
Yeah.
And I feel like you and Trevor are amazing at the example that you have as husband and wife, as parents, and it's so evident in your life that you guys have such a strong foundation of security in God, because I don't see you trying to, get too focused or codependent on each other, and it's so encouraging to see the strength in your marriage.
Well,
and so that's awesome. You guys are pretty cool.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming that even though you've been a disciple for so long, that you still have moments of struggle in this area, that you still have times where it is difficult, or that the temptation is to be insecure. What do you feel like helps you be the most secure? Or are there certain scriptures that you cling to, or ways that you come back to God to continue to be secure?
I think the thing that brings the most security is just in being honest with people. When you can just be completely open with people and share your darkest secrets and your worst temptations, and then someone can say, I understand. I have the same feelings. I've been there too. That just, that's what I love about being in this church, is that I feel like we all try to be honest about who we really are, and we don't need to put on any fake faces.
Yeah.
I mean, we might try sometimes, but the truth is going to come out. So,
yeah, I think in the devotional I did right before our conversation, I talked about vulnerability and just that idea of how closely security and vulnerability are tied to one another. And I feel like that's it's a hard place to be sometimes, when you're needing to be vulnerable, but you don't have the security in relationship to really go there.
Right.
And so how do you feel like you've built relationships to get to that place?
Well, usually Trevor drags me into them. No, earlier in our church, we had pretty set discipling, and so it was kind of forced upon me, and it was for my good. I don't think I ever would have confessed half of the things that I needed to confess if I wouldn't have had a weekly time with a discipleship partner. And then, as I said, as I got married, Trevor he's very adamant about resolving things in our relationship. And so he was, okay, we're off to see Fritz and Colleen, or we're off to see Tim and Wendy, or whoever it is. So things get resolved that way. But it just takes, and then after you build up those relationships and after you feel comfortable with people, I know there's people that I can talk to without a doubt that are going to be loving and understanding.
I really appreciate that constant effort to involve other people, because I think that when it comes to security, I think for me, we're all relational beings. And when it comes to finding security in God, sometimes it can be hard because he seems so far away, or he seems like I can't touch him. He's not tangible in the same way you are. And so I feel like it's such a blessing that he gives us people to be able to be that stand-in at times when I can't connect to him the same way that I can at other times. And so I love that continuous drawback to being open and having our lives be transparent, because it's for our benefit and not just to be in trouble. But I relate to that feeling of way back in the day in our church, that discipling, when it felt forced or there wasn't that relationship that was so important to security. I feel like things have changed so much in the last 15 years that now we can really move out into that space of being vulnerable again, because it feels more safe. And I think even going back to your definition of security, that protection that we know we're there for one another, and that's so encouraging. And so our identity is being daughters of the King, right? This whole year we're talking about being chosen, we're talking about our identity in God, And how do you feel like you embrace that or struggle against that at times?
I feel like I embrace that. I am so glad that God chose me. I don't know why, but I'm totally on board. I'm like, God, that all right.
Yeah.
When I see what he did at the cross, everything that he went through, there's just no doubt in my mind that he loves each one of us so much. So I don't have any problem if he wants to choose me. Pick me, baby.
I need to be picked.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And I love that about you, because I feel like I can relate to that feeling of like, I think that worthiness, or that secure feeling of like, God gives me worth and I'll take it.
Yes.
I'll gladly take the worth that he's going to give me. So that's super encouraging. And so I feel like, so you and Trevor have 3 amazing kids, and that was a journey for you guys as well. And so how do you feel like when it comes to your motherhood and your parenting, how does security kind of bleed into that, or the way that you're secure in God?
Well, I feel like kids are they're all insecure. They're bound to be insecure. And knowing how insecure I was, I wish I could take that away from them. Mm. But I feel like it's just important to let them express the things that they're feeling, and just to listen, and to breathe life and encouragement into them, and affirmation. And I really try to focus my kids on the fact that God has a plan for every person that he's created, and he's made them all unique and special. Yeah. And so he has them here for a reason. They have a specific thing to do. And so they don't need to be insecure that they're different from others, or whatever. They're not as talented in this or tall, or whatever the situation is, that God has made them for a reason.
That's so encouraging, because I think, especially in a world where our kids are so exposed to media and images online of who they should be, even more so than we were.
Yeah.
I think it's so encouraging to see that incorporated in your parenting, and how it's so different from how you were raised. And one of the things that Danny and I talk about all the time is like, man, like we are breaking generational, sins, generational curses. Like it feels big, because I don't think I was as confident as my daughter was at her age. I remember being super nervous and anxious, and just seeing how amazing she is, and like she just is herself.
That's awesome.
And that's so encouraging to me, because I feel like that all comes from the 20 years I've been with God. It comes from all the things he's poured into me. Now I can pour that into her. And so it's so encouraging when you see that in other parents. And I see that in your kids. I feel like your family is so, I'm sure there's things that you guys struggle with, but it just is so encouraging to see when you guys are together and you're just, you fit well, and it's not like you're trying to pretend to be anything else in front of people. And so I really love that. And so are there any scriptures or anything that you would encourage the women who are out there when they're looking for security in God, when they're trying to cling to finding out who they are in their identity in God? Are there any scriptures that you would encourage them with?
There's a couple in Isaiah. The one I think of is that he has written our names on the palm of his hand, or he's engraved our names on the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
That is so encouraging, just to remember that God has us right here. We're always on his mind. We're always in his thoughts, because we're right here, right in front of him. And then another one of my favorite scriptures is that a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. And I just think about how before I became a Christian, I was a smoldering wick. I was just hanging on by a little thread, and God's like, I'm not going to give you more than you can handle. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to keep your little light burning.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That is super encouraging. I feel like sometimes we feel really small, but God cares even about that smallest smoldering wick.
Yes, exactly.
And So that's super encouraging. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Sure.
Those are all my questions. I don't know if there's
Great.
anything else you wanted to share, but that's it for today.
All right.
Well, thank you for joining us for her story. We're really excited to be able to have you watch us next week again. We'll be having some more conversations, but thank you again, Jen.
You're welcome.